I started this video talking about how my car had been going since the mechanical failure I had on the track day. The short answer is, it hadn't been. Track closures and other mishaps, mostly caused by myself, meant that I hadn't been back out on track much at all. Going into the weekend, however, I had a healthy car and an open track. The only issue is that rain was scheduled all weekend.
Yeah, I tried to drive again on Friday night, the track was closed. Last night was Saturday, tried to drive again and there was a big accident.
Yes, it was that accident.
Yeah, today looks like rain.
I managed to get some dry laps in on the Sunday morning to instill some confidence in myself and the car. But I thought it'd be nice to talk about driving on the Nürburgring in the wet, because obviously I was still going to drive. Anyway, should you be fearful of driving the track in the wet?
Yes!
Yes, absolutely. But there are positives too. First of all, driving any track in the wet makes you a better driver. That should be obvious. Secondly, given that the Nürburgring is a toll road, many people choose to not drive when it's wet, meaning the track is way quieter.
Cool.
No more queues to get on or off. Nice. Lastly, if you're in a rear-wheel drive car, there are plenty of opportunities to explore the limits of your steering lock should you have a rear traction issue. Its dangers are obviously amplified in the wet, there's no doubt about that, but the same can be said of any racetrack. This video shows my progression as we start out slow and build up to a half-decent pace. Most of my confidence in this video comes from other drivers, especially the ring taxis who really show their value when the track is wet. Anyway, before we head up to the track, we're going to have a little check over of the car, a little catch up, and then we'll get back out there.
They really like God and stuff here, I tell you. I fucking love it, man. It's spitting at the minute, it's not terrible. Everybody in, you know the joke by now. Just gonna do some small changes to the car and check over. So I'm gonna check the oil, have a look underneath, and I'm also gonna put the roll bar on a slightly softer setting. We put it to full stiff on the track day, and I've not noticed any real improvement, other than I'm finding the car a bit more harder to control when I'm braking into corners. I mean, that could be a few things. Could also be driver mod, you know, trying to learn the track. But I mean, the track's really bumpy, right? And quite a lot of the areas where I'm braking or needing to brake hard is bumpy, and the classic Toyota ice mode, right? So the pedal just goes rock solid because it thinks you're on ice, and I wish you could like turn it off somehow, and you have to like kind of push through, and then suddenly the brakes grab super hard, and I'm definitely not braking as late or as hard as what I could be in most places really because of this. But so yeah, I'm gonna anyway jack the back of the car up with the jack, that's the one. Put the roll bar probably on like a mid setting and just have a little health check, and then we'll go back up and do some slightly mildly moist laps, mildly moistings. So the good news is it looks like I can actually do this without taking anything off. The bad news is the near side wheel looks to have some fluid on the inside of it, so let's see if we can figure out where that's coming from. But if you look in this wheel, you see all the little specks of something. So maybe we will take this wheel off and just have a look. The brake disc cracking situation. Cracking, geez, grommet, isn't getting any worse. All right, good news and bad news. So the grease is undeniably CV grease from this drive shaft. So I think it's just weeping out the edges where it's been getting hot maybe, or you know, maybe I put too much grease in, because this is another one that I rebuilt, right? This is the replacement one, and it's also having some minor issues, nothing crazy. This you can see around the edges, but it's not like enough to be covering, it's not like covering the drive shaft or anything, so it's not a lot, it's just, you know, spitting a little bit out. But the boot is, you know, the boot's not torn or anything, he says. It's not torn, I mean, it's still on there, so you see a little bit there on the brake caliper. I'm not going to worry about it. So the last thing to do is the oil and the consumption. We've used 2.5 litres so far, driving over here, and I think 25 laps maybe. It's not great, but it's not terrible. So to put that into perspective, you know, every 2 laps is probably equivalent to one MR2 race, like what I used to do in the MR2 racing. Everyone remembers the MR2 racing, right? So yeah, you could say the car's had like 12 MR2 races of abuse, plus, you know, 600-700 road miles, and it's used 2.5 litres of oil. I mean, it's still a lot, right? It's not the end of the world, but I'm gonna run out of oil. That's another thing. I've only got that 2.5 litres left. Cool. Let's get back out and let's see what the MR2 can do under a wet Nordschleife. And I forgot to put my windows up, didn't I? Yes. Oh yeah, tyre pressures. I've gone up in tyre pressures, right? It's raining pretty bad now. The track's meant to be pretty wet, but Oh, the Saab's just come and blocked me in, that's nice. Can you see? Get out of the way. We're up to like 28 front and about 27 rear cold, which is, the AO52s like it a bit softer when it's hot, but when it's wet, they do like it a bit higher than that, so let's see.
I'm not going to lie, my first experience in the MR2 in the wet was definitely a bit scary. It would be ridiculous to deny that. My first lap, I just went kind of steady, followed this Golf around for most of it. It was on German plates and I figured he probably knows where he's going. The most interesting part about my first lap, however, is towards the end of the lap where a certain VW up goes past. We'll see more about them later. Anyway, I only did one lap at the start because I had a little water problem myself.
Well, I just made my first wet laps in the MR2. Well, wet lap, I had to stop quickly because let's just say there was a bit more, I needed a wee too. Something, I was trying to think of something clever, but anyway, gonna go back out, carry on doing some laps. Yeah, hopefully try and find a little bit of confidence in the wet, but obviously not gonna go silly, are we? No, we are not.
Anyway, my next session in the car, this is where I really got to grips with the track, because I stayed out for not one, not two, but 7 laps. I did an hour-and-a-half stint in the car, in the wet, back to back. I really wanted to learn the track. The weather was consistent, I had plenty of fuel in the car, and I was enjoying, as scary as it was, learning. I'm going to talk you through some of the things that I learned on those 8 laps then in the rain. We'll go through some clips, I'll show you some things to do and not do, and then at the end we'll watch my fastest lap, which was my last lap, and we'll also talk about some things that could also be done better. Obviously I'm not an expert by any means, I was just going off previous experience from racing in the rain in the UK, trying to find the grip, watching what others were doing, and yeah, just enjoying getting a little bit faster without being too silly about it, because it's still the Nürburgring after all. There's not a lot of runoff if things do go wrong. Anyway, first thing to take note of is my approach here to the carousel. This was on one of my early laps, and that is not the way to do it. We'll see the correct way in a couple of laps. What racing in the rain in the UK has taught me is that, of course, the racing line should be avoided where possible, but this is the Nürburgring, there's so many corners that overlap. It's going to be really difficult to not touch some of the sticky stuff. Now, as I said in the intro, the ring taxis really did help me. There was the Hyundai flying about, and also the BMW M5 was on circuit quite a lot. So what we're doing is just trying to avoid the apex as much as possible, but also you want to be as close as you can be to maintain that your minimum speed isn't too low, right? We get a nice thank you from Mr. Ring Taxi Man there for moving over. Thank you very much. The MR2 has a lot of traction out of corners, being mid-engined, and it's got, you know, half decent tyres. I'm on Yokohama AO52, which for a grippy tyre, they are excellent in the wet. Probably the best tyre that you can have if you want to drive in all conditions on track is the AO52. But yeah, all of my inputs, I'm trying to be extra stable, and even that catches me out sometimes. My throttle, my steering, my brake. The car does have ABS. It's not the best on this old Toyota, but it is helping me quite a lot in a few areas, especially when I'm having to brake on the racing line. But we're just trying to stay as wide as we can in most of the corners, and there's a lot more traction than what you think. I had a lot more grip than what you might think if you're used to just driving around slowly on the racing line. Obviously it takes a bit of a mental switch that you have to try and flick to tell your brain that there is going to be grip out here. And don't get me wrong, I was still having some fun now and again. Why not? Anyway, Anyway, watch my approach now to the carousel. Ah, it's still wrong. Ooh. What do you think I could be doing differently there? Well, we'll see in a moment. Passing cars was quite difficult if they were staying to the outside, which is where I wanted to be, where the grip was. If I was having to pass cars going onto the apex, then there's a good chance I could lose traction and slide off into them, and I had to be very careful there, of course. Whipperman here, where the ring taxi goes past, very difficult in the wet because, you know, the racing line kind of goes straight through both corners, so there's no way you can avoid crossing it. Just have to be very smooth with the inputs, not put too much load on the tyres, and hope you make it through. Here you can see I'm watching closely where the ring taxi goes and trying to take the same line. He's going very wide here. I still get a little bit of a slip on the exit of Brunchen. Obviously I'm not going to keep pace with an M5 CS in the wet, but especially a professionally driven one. But it was good to have these moments now and again to see where the professionals were driving. Some corners I was surprised that I could actually take the racing line on. But I wouldn't have known that without watching these other drivers. Look at the traction that this Hyundai has on the corner where I like to sometimes let it slide out a little bit. Staying as wide as possible had the most traction, and this is where I learnt the proper way to enter the carousel in the wet. You stay to the left. It's very bumpy on the outside, and it's obviously going to be rubbered in from a lot of cars entering at some velocity, so if you stay on the left hand side where it's not rubbered in, you have a lot more stability on the brakes, and you're entering the carousel slower anyway, so you don't quite need the same angle that you would in the dry. Now this section on the entrance to Hatzenbach was very tricky all the time. There was no way around it. This is probably the sketchiest place on track. Anyway, a little bit later in this lap, this is my 4th or 5th lap, look who we see again. The car which blew past me on my first lap we're now just about keeping pace with, and unfortunately I didn't have a rear view camera in, as he does let me pass just on the exit of Adenauer Forest here, and we do stay together for quite a while, but I think I just had the edge. So that was pretty confidence inspiring to me. I knew I'd definitely gotten faster as the laps were going by, but there was still plenty of room for improvement. Anyway, we're going to start my 7th and final lap of this session. Remember, I've been driving the car now for almost an hour and a half. This is going to be my last lap. I'm ready for a break, but I was still feeling pretty good, and because I was getting faster and faster each time, obviously I was enjoying it. A bit of a double-edged sword that though, of course, because as the confidence grows, there is going to be more opportunity to make mistakes, but we're starting out here, and the MR2 obviously not being too powerful, I can get on full throttle from the start, and I'm staying on full throttle here, almost down to where the bottom of the hill is. So I'm letting off just slightly at the compression and then getting back on the throttle, but trying to stay kind of wide and drive around the outside of these first few corners. Now into this section, sorry I don't know the names of all the corners yet, it's very slippy everywhere. Towards the pit entrance, I can imagine a lot of cars in the wet have come into contact with that pit entrance. There's that famous picture of the Tesla doing its best Tony Hawk impression. Into T13 I would prefer to be on the outside, but there's a vehicle there, and as I said earlier, I now have to be very careful to make sure that I don't slide out and make contact with them. into the next corner, staying wide again, and this braking zone, this area is in my opinion the scariest part of the track. You can see a little twitch of the steering wheel there as the ABS is trying to save me from going off, but on the exit of this corner I managed to not have an oversteer moment there, but I'm being very gentle on the throttle and the brakes. I'm trying to drive through the middle of the Hatzenbach area, and then I'm trying to stay wide on the exit, but we are going to cross over the racing line here. There's no way around that. Then into the next corner, I'm staying wide again. Get a little bit of oversteer there as the racing line crosses over, but then I'm back on the exit and I'm full throttle here now, up towards Flugplatz. So I'm easing off a little bit just over the bridge, and then I'm easing off into Flugplatz. I don't want to brake too late. I'm not going to win any awards for being the latest braker into there, but I'm maintaining just above 70 miles per hour. It's about 120 kilometers. Nothing crazy, normally doing a good bit more than that in the dry, but we made it round. And now I'm back on the throttle, not quite full throttle, but almost. We're creeping up towards 100 mile an hour here. Could probably go faster, but hey, I'm just trying to keep it on the road. We've got a lot of spray from the vehicle in front as well, and I want to be on the outside here, so they're staying inside. It's a Yaris GR, but I want to be on the outside anyway, so we're going to give him a bit of room. Now, has he seen me? I wasn't so sure. He's staying on the racing line still, so that's a bit interesting. I don't just want to dive around the outside. Give him a little toot there just to let him know that I'm here, and then we can pass him. So this is another tricky section on the way down to the foxhole, so there's no way around it. You're going to have to be on the racing line, but it's not too rubbered in, so you just kind of have to do minimal steering inputs, and then when we get down to the compression at the bottom, we're going to stay on the outside. But now we're back on the racing line on the brakes, so we want to be a bit steady here. And again, I'm not taking the apex into the next corner. I'm not taking the apex. I'm just letting the car roll around the corner, and then we're into Adenauer Force. And this is very slippy. There's no way around oversteer here unless you want to be very slow. But I managed to keep some good pace there and not have too much oversteer. I'm full throttle now for quite a while. Up to 5th gear, we're approaching 100 miles an hour again. And I'm just going to start backing off a little bit, gentle brake. And I'm going to stay on the outside of this corner again, kind of in the middle. And again, we're braking here on the racing line. Maybe I would have been better here if I tried to brake off the racing line, but we're staying wide. This is a sketchy moment as well, or it can be. But I'm staying to the right here and braking off the racing line. The MR2 doesn't enjoy braking down here in the dry, so I'm staying off the racing line and braking just off to the right and just letting the car get around without too much drama. This section is lovely in the wet, but absolutely treacherous in the dry. I guess that's a theme of the Nürburgring. Again, just trying to stay off the racing line. We're going through the miss, hit, miss, but we're going to miss. Just going to try and stay wide. And I'm back on the full throttle now, down to the slowest corner on the circuit. Again, just being super gentle, super slow. I'm not trying to set any lap times here, right? I'm just trying to go as quickly as I can with the confidence that I've got and try and not overdo it. But we're back on the full throttle now, down to the bridge. And again, I'm going to brake offline here, because when I was braking online, even in the dry, you'll have seen in my previous videos, I can have some moments. Have a little bit of a twitch as the racing line crosses by, but we get away with it. And then here we can brake on the racing line, doesn't seem too bad, but we're again going to just miss the apex. And now we're back on full throttle. So the next area is also a little bit sketchy on the brakes. The MR2 hates it here in the dry. It's a bit of a concern for me, generally speaking, but in the wet, not a lot I can do. Luckily, this rental car stayed on the inside because I wanted to be on the outside anyway. That corner was tricky at the start, but I managed to get quite confident with it towards the end, and we're back on full throttle now up the hill. But I'm not trying to go too quickly. because we're kind of staying off the racing line ever so slightly, but this is really bumpy. And the next corner is easily flat in the dry, but I'm going to have a big lift and then get back on the throttle just as we get halfway round. And now I'm flat out again now, up the hill. This is a long uphill in the dry. It's obviously even longer in the wet, but I'm having a little lift as we get towards the corners. I don't want to be going round the corners flat out. I just want to have a little safety lift. I guess if I had a little bit more confidence, I could be a good bit faster here, because every little lift up this hill costs a lot of time in the MR2. But we're back on full throttle here. This is where the Integra crashed. Let's try and not do that. The fuel tank is staying attached. That's a good result. And now we're on our way to the carousel. We've got this last corner to go, which is another very tricky. This is the last very tricky braking area for me in the MR2. I couldn't resist a little slide this time. Yeah, a lot more grip on the outside there. I'll maybe show you on a previous lap. The laps I was following another car around, but I'm taking the better braking approach here into the carousel. It's a lot more stable in the rain, and you're not sacrificing too much time anyway because you're going so much slower around the carousel. But I'm back on the full throttle here, up to the next corner, which can be tricky because there's a green painted section on the outside, and we want to stay wide, but we want to avoid that. So we're using a little bit of the camber on the way in. We're not taking the racing line. And now this section into Hoax is very slippy. Now, I'm doing well here to keep the car pointing in the right direction. It might not look it, but yeah, it can be very, very slippy. The braking there is also difficult. But again, I'm just taking a nice wide line as we go down towards Whipperman. I'm going very gentle here, and I'm going to try and stay as far right as I can before crossing over back over to the racing line, and I'm just trying to keep the car as stable as possible. We have a little bit of a wiggle on the way out, but nothing too crazy. Again here, I'm just staying wide, just trying to maintain as much traction as I can as we go down towards YouTube Corner. Brunchen is very tricky in the wet, but I did find some good grip on the outside. But exiting Brunchen 2, it's almost impossible to maintain traction here. I had a little wiggle, nothing too crazy, but we got out there unscathed. This next corner is also very tricky. I know I keep saying that, but we're on the home stretch now, not long to go. Now, I learned off the ring taxis that you can actually take the apex here. Yeah, the track's not too bad there at all. I don't know if it's to do with the downhill or the camber or what. Over the jump, sometimes I try to go right, sometimes I went left, but the important thing is to be on the outside of the track when we go around the next corner. And then I'm kind of floating around the inside, and I prefer to be on the outside here where that Golf is. So I'm a little bit scared. I'm a little bit scared there, but we got away with it. And then I'm putting the car into a high gear and just trying to baby it around this section, because I did have a few unsettling moments around here on previous laps. But yeah, we got away with it that time. Again, I'd probably prefer to be braking a little bit more to the right here, but we're going to take a super wide line again. And again, and then we've just got the mini carousel in the last corner to go after this. The mini carousel we're not going to take. We're going to drive around the outside, sort of in the middle. So we're going to touch the outside of the concrete just to get a little bit of the camber, but we're still going to maintain the grip. So we're full throttle here, up to the last corner, up to 4th gear. And the last corner can be a little sketchy because it's more narrow than it looks on the entry. So we're staying to the outside of the track, and I'm just kind of babying it round. We're on the last corner now. We're just going ever so steady, and then we're going to get back on the full throttle to finish. So yeah, still plenty of room for improvement there, but I was pretty happy with the progress made. Hopefully I won't have to drive the track too much in the wet, but I'm certainly not going to be scared of doing so if the weather dictates it. Driving the track in the wet is pretty special. The Nürburgring's scary enough in the dry, right? Or that's why we all go, because the thrill of driving it is so much so. But in the wet, is it more of a thrill? Perhaps not. A little bit more scary though, for sure. Alright, back at the digs. So I ended up doing 8 laps in the wet. I'll tell you, the time is quite interesting. Obviously went out pretty steady at first, and you know, as the confidence went on as the laps went by, I was trying to see where some of the cars were going. Obviously a wet line, you want to stay off the racing line, right? And the track was consistently wet, which, you know, there was no like dry spots, because right now it's kind of sunny, and not sunny, but you can see the sun trying to break through in some areas. So it might be that, you know, later tonight it might be drier in some areas, but yeah, sketchy, man. We started our first lap. The first lap was a 12:09, and then look, just got better and better with every lap pretty much, and yeah, down to a sub 11 in the rain. But yeah, it takes a lot of smoothness. I'm a pretty smooth driver anyway, right? But you have to be super smooth, and there's some areas where I was just like, wow, you know, I was just really like, fuck, like this is like, even at low speed you can definitely have a bad accident in the wet there, just because of how slippery. I mean, there was racing here yesterday. It was Saturday. There was some race series was on all day yesterday, and yeah, to then be wet today, so the track's like extra rubbered in, I guess, maybe, I don't know, because it's been raining as well, maybe it's washed away. But yeah, on the racing line, super slippery. But no, it was good fun in a sense, I guess. So there we go, as my first MR2 experience in the wet. Had a few little moments, but nothing too crazy. And yeah, we went, what did we gain? From the first lap to the last lap, I gained 1 minute and 16 seconds. So that's pretty good. Yeah, maybe some practice for some future racing endeavours here, maybe. Certainly going to be a good idea just to keep driving even if it's wet. And now I've got some more laps on my card, so we've made a total of 14 laps today, so that's not bad. Was that any of that in focus? Fuck. Yeah, thanks for watching, and I'm going to go watch the F1. Bye.